out and gives a big announcement about Global Rapid Rugby. So here we go. What is it all about? So overnight, the World Rugby had a meeting in London, and they ticked off a number, or rubber stamped a number of things. One, they allocated the Women's Rugby World Cup in 2021 to New Zealand. It was between New Zealand and Australia. Another thing, which is fantastic news, is that they allowed Fiji and Samoa to come onto the rugby board, and which is good news because it shows that they've got their administration up to scratch. And then the final thing that they did was they gave their approval for Global Rapid Rugby, which is a new name for Twiggy Forrester's World Series Rugby or World Rugby Series that he had this year, and is the third name now that he's had for this competition. It was before was it the Pacific Indo-Pacific League League or something like that. And yes, they've come out with a flashy video yet again. So we actually know what the teams are now. So we have obviously the Force are going to be involved in the team out of Hong Kong called the Dragons. A team out of Singapore, and I've gone blank as to what the name is now. A team out of KL in Malaysia. A team from Fiji, a team from Samoa, and an unnamed team from Japan. So no West Sydney team, no team in New Zealand, no team in Hawaii, no second team in Hong Kong, in Japan either. So those are the teams that they have, and they say they're going to announce which team in Japan it is next year. Now it's going to be one of the established ones, probably the one that probably Panasonic Wild Knights, because they came down and played. The Force, Robbie Deans is the head coach there, so it would make sense for them to be involved. Wouldn't be surprised if it was them that are there. So yeah, that's who I think we will be having that will probably be coming along. And I just rather got my comments up. There we go. So good evening, Simon, Andre, Christopher, all in the live chat. Great to see you. So China Tigers, South China Tigers from Hong Kong. There we go. So yes, we've got those 7 teams. Now, obviously, the Force do exist. The Japanese team is most likely to come from an existing team. The other teams, though, will need to be built up. Now, hopefully, the Fiji team will be hopefully be the Drua. Christopher says, I heard that Japan may have one union controlled and one private. Twiggy came out today and said he has one team from Japan. So we'll see. I know there was a rumour of having 2 teams from Japan, but it looks like that's not going to happen. So the team from Hong Kong will probably be most of the national team, probably, because, yes, the team is going to be administrated from out of Hong Kong by the Hong Kong Rugby Union. Twiggy decided to make pains that he was not happy with how the ARU, how rugby within Australia, it was like running through honey, he said, whilst he said Raylene Castle had been really trying to help him. He said other factors got in the way, which is why there was no West Sydney team. So you got to say, New South Wales Rugby Union is probably part of that problem. It's once the New South Wales Rugby Union or the Shield teams there haven't got on with the ARU, and there have definitely been issues in that area. So yes. One of the things that was very big in this was obviously Twiggy himself. He was one of the key people talking, and they do. Everyone talks about him and how he is a international philanthropist. That's very much, very clearly stated during all this. This is it does have a feel of being a publicity engine for him, as well as trying to keep rugby alive as well. So it does have that kind of side to it. We do hope that doesn't become the overriding factor in this in this competition. So those are the teams, and it was good to get at least some insight into what the teams were going to be. We also had that. I mean, obviously the season's also going to, I think it was from January through to June. We're in November already. It's not long to get a whole bunch of stuff sorted out for those teams. So you hope there's been a lot of organisation going on quietly around these teams, and hopefully we'll have announcements around players for especially sort of people like the KL, Samoa, Singaporean, Hong Kong teams. I say, hopefully we hear that it comes out that the Drua are the Fiji team. If not, who are their players going to be? That's also needs to be answered. He said there was a mixture of private investment and union investment, so it'll be interesting. So we'll have to see how that all pans out. So there's that side of it, but there's also a whole bunch of law changes that are being, well, if not trialled, at least made for this competition. First up, it's going to be a 70-minute game, not an 80-minute game, which makes it 35 minutes each half, and that means you can deliver an entire game within a 90-minute TV show. Is basically the plan, which I'm assuming is going to mean that you've got your 70 minutes, which leaves another 20 minutes, 15 minutes for half time, and a couple of minutes at either end. It's going to be a tight, or maybe it's going to be 10 minutes half time. It's going to be a tight fit into that 90 minutes for the TV scheduling. But you can clearly see that's what that's been done for. They're also talking about having more play during this. So no marks in the 22, no kicking out on the full from the 22. Starts in February, sorry, not January. No kicking out in the full from 22. If you kick it from your own 40 or your own half, it bounces, then goes out in the opposition 22. Then you get the line out to give you an attacking line out. So lots see teams doing that. And they were talking about reducing players in the defensive line. There was no explanation as to how, but perhaps it's part of that kicking deep that teams are going to have players back to cover that kicking into their 22. But we'll have to see. There's nothing else mentioned around about that sort of thing. We're also going to have rolling subs, maximum of 10, which I think was something that we had during the World Rugby Challenge or Series, whatever it's called, this year. And then there are a couple of other, and then also on defence. At scrum time, defence is going to be a further 5 metres back than they are already at scrum time. Points. There's going to be some changes in point scoring. We've still got the power try, but now it's going to be worth 9 points with an automatic conversion. So that's if you attack from your own 22 all the way out, and you're not going to be able to use a penalty to break that. Apparently, the Crusaders were the first team to score one of those this year. Penalties are going to drop down to 2 points, which once one of these changing of scoring is something we've discussed previously. And if you reduce it down to 2 points, now you're basically changing it now from changing 3 penalties from being more than a converted try to being less than a converted try. So there's even more encouragement there of cynical penalties. So I wouldn't be surprised if they have a pretty aggressive around yellow cards for repeat offences, because I think otherwise they're going to be asking for it. And also red cards are going to change as well, so that basically once a player gets red carded, they will have to be off for the rest of the game, but after 15 minutes they can be replaced by another player. And they also put some orange cards in there under review as well. So there's been a whole change there of laws around this. I'm not entirely comfortable with all of that, I'll be totally honest with you. When Twiggy was asked why he would have, what's the purpose of this, he said that we need to evolve the modern game to make it more easily digestible, and that kind of thing. So which I'm not sure that that I totally agree with him on this one. That the modern day person can't cope or can't doesn't want to see a interesting game. And so it's one of those sorry, I've got Tom English joining me for the show. How are you doing, sir?
How are you, Paul?
Hi, yeah, good to have you on the show. So yes, I've just run through the new laws that they're putting in there, and then basically and his reasoning behind it, saying that we're evolving the modern game so it's an easy, digestible format, fast action, and that side of things. Now, obviously, me being an old fella,
Yeah.
I'm all into all this long form stuff. You being a youngster and part of the new kind of
Yep.
YouTube generation who likes sound bites, do you think we really need that this is really the way that things have to go, to be shorter and easier and quicker?
I don't think things have to change, no, but I think, it would be good if they, I think it can't hurt to experiment with this kind of thing. There'll still be plenty of the old, traditional sort of rugby, if you like. And I don't think it would hurt to, try something new for this competition, lot up in the air. Can't hurt to have a gamble,
Yeah,
That's it. Mm.
I think it's under that. I get that kind of side of things. I'm just thinking that things like long format writing is on the rise. Rather, so people read it. That quite often now that blog posts have to be over 1,000 words for people. That people are actually digesting things. Long form videos are also on the rise. And NFL isn't an easy game to understand and takes 3 hours. So I think he's falling for a sales pitch here rather than perhaps maybe he's going down the right route. But we'll see about that kind of one.
Well, it was an interesting point he raised, I think, today, that broadcasters were very interested in a game that would be all over in an hour and a half. And I think, from a broadcast perspective, that's godsend, But whether that'll really appeal to a fan as much as it would to, the TV channels or whatever, I'm not sure. I mean,
I think reducing it by 5 minutes for the fans turning up, you're not going to notice it that much difference.
No.
I get that for your mixed what's the word I'm looking for? Mixed programming channels, an hour and a half is good, but for sports channels, we've already said that part of the reason we're having more games in Super Rugby is they want more content. So if you're going to make it short and make it less content, is that really the way they want to?
Yeah, it's interesting. Maybe it allows for more sort of pre-game and post-game, but that's interesting what you raise.
So we'll see how that one pans out. That one, I guess, I'm not so worried about. What do you think about reducing about the points changes and taking penalties down to 2 points?
Okay, well, I'm from Sydney, and rugby league, sort of the big thing here, most of the people sort of watch it, and it just does seem very rugby league. Obviously rugby league employ that system, and that's fine, but, rugby union sort of 3 points, everyone's used to that now, and, changing it like that almost sounds like they're taking tips from league, and is that the direction you want to head? I don't think so.
Well, he was very careful to say that he was keeping 15 players on the pitch. If he'd removed players from the pitch, then obviously there would be a big question mark as to whether he was going down the league route.
No doubt.
But also, I mean, the other thing about league is that a try and a conversion is 6 points in there. So basically, 3 penalties equals a converted try.
Yeah.
Whereas what they're doing here is they're taking it from being 3 penalties being 9 points or more than a converted try of 7 to being 6 points. Which is obviously less than a converted try.
Yeah.
And I think they're just asking for teams to cynically infringe to give up 2 points rather than 7.
Interesting. I mean, obviously, from inside the 22 or anything, they won't get the benefit of these power tries or anything like that. So, you got the 5 points are on offer and so on, but the question has to be asked whether teams will infringe more. in order, less points conceded, I suppose.
So we're going to see how that one goes. And reducing players in the defensive line sounds like a good idea, but he's not explained how that's going to happen.
He didn't. No, it was vague. He said there are still going to be 15 players on the pitch, but there are going to be less in the defensive line. I just don't. Yeah, I don't understand. They've been pretty vague about a lot of these things, and they have clarified some things to their credit, but things like that, they're just. I don't understand it. I'm interested to hear more, but.
Yeah, interested to hear more on that one. Christopher Edwards-Bailey in the live chats. Yeah, he's all for moving penalties down. But from memory, the NRC tried this 2 seasons, or was it 3 seasons ago?
Okay. Yep.
And NRC has reverted back to the normal scoring. I don't think it was a great success in the NRC personally, but we'll see how that. Did you follow that when it was in the NRC?
Yeah, I've been watching the NRC for a while. What I've noticed that I don't know whether this is due to. I don't know whether it's due to that new kind of format of point scoring. But certainly, even when they reverted back to the old one, there were still heaps of more tries scored than there were penalty goals kicked. I think there were 2 penalty goals kicked this year, or 4 or something. It's not massive numbers. So, yeah, are these point changes necessary? To spark more attacking rugby, if you like. That's what the fans like, so on. But yeah, I'm not sure at this stage. I think I prefer the traditional system. I definitely do.
It's easy to say when you kind of anti-change, but we'll see how it pans out. So I've seen it happen in RC. I don't think it made that much difference. I don't think it's going to make that much difference here. It's going to come down to the intent of the coaches at the end of the day. And by having a essentially centrally run thing, they can tell coaches this is how you're going to play. Otherwise, you're going to get attacked. So I think they could have gone down that route instead. So that's most of the rules. Obviously there's the other interesting one I thought was if you kick it out of your own 40 meters, i.e. out your own half, and it bounces and goes out in the opposition 22, you get a line out. So players with a big boot are going to be
Well, so was it from inside your own 40, was it?
Yep.
Should it? Yep. And, well, that's essentially what they have in rugby league, isn't it? It's like that 40-20 rule. So, again, that's just another thing. It just makes you wonder if they are trying to sort of go down that path somewhat, whether I don't think they're trying it, in any massive way, but just little things like that. They're just a bit. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what they, obviously ball retention, does that mean they'll get a line out or a scrum, or what would it mean?
They would get their own line out. On
their own line out, yeah.
But you're right, they mentioned the 420 thing, I didn't understand that. Okay, that's apparently a rugby league thing, which I'm unaware of. So, yeah, that's interesting. And Andre says, then the rolling maul, the driving maul play will play a greater role in, instead of open rugby, as we're going to promote that kicking to the corner more. Yep, and I think we are going to see that, and so perhaps a Brumbies style team will go down well. In this. So he then also said he wants to get 20 of the top 100 players in the world to play in this competition. Did you spot that bit?
Well, it sounds great. If he pulled it off, I would have no issues with that. But you've got to remember, these aren't, sort of established franchises that have been in the game for years and years and years. They're just starting out. And like we've seen with the Sunwolves and like the pro rugby in the USA and, the Rebels and the Force and so on, it's not going to be all smooth sailing from the get-go. And whether you're going to get these 20 of the best 100 players or whatever going over to play for Hong Kong or, well, what are some of the other teams? Kuala Lumpur, Singapore, is that a reality? I don't know.
What really kind of interested me was then that obviously they had their own media guy there who kind of was unofficially throwing out names to ask, and you were like, okay, well, these are clearly names that they've got lined up because otherwise he wouldn't be asking them. So, and they said, oh yes, well, of the top 100 players, we've already got one. We've got Jeremy Thrush, ex-All Black. And I'm like, he's not really one of the top 100 players in the world. Let's be honest.
This is another thing that's irking me a bit about this. You know, they are hyping themselves up a lot. I think they mentioned that, was it Matt Hodgson was one of the most successful players ever or something. Is he really? Like, no offense to Matt Hodgson, but is he really? Like, yeah, there's a bit of hype, and they've still got to sort of fulfill that, if you like.
Hong Kong means 0% tax. Well, Christopher, when I lived in Hong Kong, I paid some tax, but it was very low. You're right. The other names they threw out there as being potentially in the top 100 in the world, Dan Carter, who is not anymore because I wouldn't have thought playing as he's kind of past it. McMahon and Dwayne Vermeulen. So if you happen to see or rumours or hear about that Carter, McMahon and Dwayne Vermeulen are linked with this, I would not be surprised at all.
Carter's playing in Japan now, isn't he?
Yep, he is playing in Japan now. And so it could be that the team he's playing for in Japan may happen to be the team that gets involved. Maybe that's part of the direction they're going in. Otherwise, because this is at the time of Super Rugby, the top league in Japan isn't active. And one of the things you said was that they would play in other comps as well. So, players who are playing in that top league could come play in this competition in their off season.
Sure.
And that could work out pretty well for them. So I guess that's the other thing is that's the only league that he's going to get top players from, because all the European leagues will be playing at this between the February-June window. You've got Super Rugby, which takes all your top players down here. So it's going to be mainly players who are part of the Japan top league. I would expect to be looking at playing a bit of rugby during their off season as well, because the top league season isn't that long. Right.
Yeah, because they shorten it because of the Sunwolves, I believe. But you do have to. There are a lot of players, former players in particular, asking questions about burnout and so on. Particularly, the seasons are too long, too much rugby, so on and so forth. And is playing in multiple leagues through the year really the smartest choice? I mean, I'm sure some players could handle it, but there are definitely a lot of players who will have that sort of in the back of their mind, and aren't going to be jumping to sign contracts, if you like.
So Andre's asking, when is this tournament again? It runs from February through to June next year. And that's the window it's going to be in, which is effectively is the Super Rugby window. Is where it is. Crystal, says the problem with Japanese players is that in 2020 they're having two seasons. The reason for that is with the Rugby World Cup happening in 2019, that pushes they can't have their season clash with that, so that pushes the season out. So it's going to be interesting around about that sort of things.
Yeah, right. Wow.
So one of the things that was mentioned in briefly in the Green and Gold Rugby podcast the other week was around about Forrester's political ambitions and commercial ambitions. I'm not aware of his political ambitions. Are you aware of what he's trying to do? Okay.
No, I've not heard anything about that. But I mean, wasn't he? I think he was going down some enterprise with who's the former Argentine, somebody on the World Rugby Board, very high up, and he was.
Oh yeah, Augustin Pichot is now his representative in South America. Yes.
Yeah, that interested me a bit when I heard it. That double connection, if you like.
Yeah, and this is one of the problems when you get up to these high levels is potential conflicts of interest, because Augustin Pichot is now also on the USA Union board because World Rugby lent them some money. He also happens to be have interest down in South America. He's getting his fingers in a lot of pies at the moment. But this does smack a lot of pro rugby. Now Forrester is a lot richer than Doug. was. So, I mean, Doug was a millionaire. We're talking about a billionaire here. So we're talking different levels of money. But it's unlike Major League Rugby, which has started up, and you don't. You can find out who owns which club. It's not but it's about the league and the teams. It's not about the people who own the teams in the league. This one seems to be very much about Forrester and about Twiggy, rather than about the rugby. And that's my main concern around this: is that is that it does seem to be about him and a bit of a publicity machine for him. That's my only concern.
Well, yeah, it does seem to be very focused on WA. You know, it's almost like the competition's sort of being set up for the Force to win it. I mean, there's probably, you know, a presumption that you can't make, but it just seems like that. You know, sort of the Force were sort of the hometown heroes of World Series rugby, and now that's might sort of continue on with this. I mean, I don't know. It's just how it seems. And,
I mean, well, if Hong Kong is effectively their national team, then they'll have a decent side. If it's a proper top league team out of Japan, they'll be competitive. If it's the Fiji Drua, they'll be competitive. But Hong Kong, Singapore, Kuala Lumpur, Samoa. Sorry, not Hong Kong. Singapore, Kuala Lumpur, and Samoa. I can't see how those teams will be competitive year one.
Sure, yeah. Oh, I mean, look at the Sunwolves. You know, 3 years and they're only just racking up a few wins a season. You know, if it's anything like them, you know, for those particular three teams, and then on the other hand, you look at the Drua and they're absolutely acing it from year one. So, you know, they've just passed their second year. So, yeah, it's a bit of a mixed bag in terms of.
The level of rugby is definitely going to be lower than it is in Super Rugby. So from that point of view, it's easy to get up to speed, which is what the Drua have been able to do, because the NRC, let's be honest, is a lower level than Super Rugby. But I still think they're going to those sides will struggle. So any other sort of last thoughts you have around this competition?
I think they're taking a massive bite out of the cherry, you know, from the get-go. Like, you've got, 7 teams, 14 rounds, you know, they're putting it all in from the get. You know, they're not starting small, they're starting big. They're making hell of a lot of changes. Even for the players themselves, there's going to be a lot to adapt to. You know, it could very possibly look nothing like it. I suspect not, but I feel like it's very possible that it might look nothing like the rugby we're used to. So that's my perspective on it. You know, I'm not entirely sold on the idea, but I'm not gonna. We'll wait to see. Benefit of the doubt, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that he doesn't want it to look like rugby as it is. He deliberately wants it to look different. So in some ways, that will be a success for him. For my mind, he's by getting it signed off now. I mean, we're in mid-November. They're kicking off in February. It doesn't give them very long to stand up to these teams. So you hope that most of the groundwork's been done for Singapore, KL, and Samoa in particular. Otherwise, I think starting with established teams, because it's this late, and just having the 4 established teams, have the other 3 do an exhibition season, like they do in Major League Rugby, would have been a way forward that was a bit more measured. But I don't. Twiggy doesn't come across as a measured kind of guy.
No.
In his approach to things. So cool. Thank you very much for coming on. You were the first person I saw tweeting about this, so it's something that obviously you have a keen interest in, and we'll be following pretty closely next year.
Absolutely.
So where can people get hold of you? What's your Twitter handle again?
No worries at all. See you then.
Let people know your Twitter handle so they can find you.
Oh, at Thomas J English 7. Will be at Thomas J English 7. You can find me on that and give me a follow. Tweet mostly about rugby anyway.
Cool. And obviously I'm at DrivingMaul. Do subscribe up there. I will be back on Sunday morning with live post-match reaction to Ireland versus New Zealand. So please do subscribe to my All Blacks edition channel down there, and up here, if you've lasted this long, 2 videos that you'll absolutely adore. Thank you very much, and that was Global Rapid Rugby for you.